My name is David Wang, and today I will be speaking about materials and design, specifically navigating the intersection between STEM and design in both your professional and personal lives. So again, this is something that I'm currently and constantly trying to navigate. Uh, so definitely not an expert by any means, but if anything, I want to share my journey with you and help show you this is one way that you can go about your personal and professional careers. Just a little bit of background about me to start. So as I mentioned, I went to school at MIT studying material science and engineering, graduated in 2019, so quite recent. So I guess a lot of what you're experiencing right now with like college, that's very fresh in my mind. I can totally relate. I'm currently at Carbon on the materials team. We'll be speaking more about Carbon, specifically the Futurecraft 4D shoe that we have created in collaboration with Adidas. Outside of my work and my school, I'm an avid fashion enthusiast and sustainability enthusiast. And I have been creating my own clothes and working on building up my own personal fashion business and I'm currently located in the California Bay Area and an avid avocado eater. So just to recap, today, the three main topics that we will be covering are, first of all, how did I get into material science in the first place? The story I'm going to share with that is how I created colors with chemistry back in high school through garage chemistry. Next, I'll be talking about my work at Carbon, specifically on the 4D collaboration with Adidas. And then I will be concluding with how materials and design has really infiltrated my personal life as well in my effort to build my personal brand around sustainability and materials-driven fashion. So again, to start out, how did I get into material science? So this is a question that I get a lot. What is material science? I guess I can't really even count how many times I've been asked this on like an Uber ride when I was in college. Typically the conversation comes up as on, oh, like, what are you? I'm a student. What are you studying? Material science. What the hell is that? So for people who are not as familiar, I would personally describe material science as the intersection of physics, chemistry, and engineering, and the intersection of that to create real world materials. So everything that you see and feel around you, the table that you're at, the glass on your laptop screen, all of that, those are all materials. And there is a lot of work that goes on to designing that. And actually, I got into STEM and I got into this field because of my love for chemistry when I was in high school. This is a photo of what my garage at home looked like around 2014. So I guess you could say that I was definitely the coolest kid in my school, definitely not. But after taking chemistry my sophomore year of high school, I fell in love with the fact that, I mean, chemistry basically felt like magic. You could mix two chemicals together and you could predict and also experience a reaction happening, and you could create a third chemical. From like the aesthetic perspective, I've also just loved how beautiful chemistry really could be. I think especially looking back on my time, I realized such a big part of how I got into chemistry was just how pretty the chemicals were, the different colors that you could actually get. So as you can kind of see inside of like my garage lab, there are a lot of chemicals that are super commonplace, super normal household chemicals. And that's really what I started with. So, I mean, on your left, you see there's baking soda, there's vinegar, maybe sulfuric acid, that's a little bit less common. There's drain cleaner as lye. and copper wire and pennies as a source for copper. And that's really how I got started with all of this, kind of just tinkering and playing around at home. So next, I'm gonna walk you through an example and one of my favorite experiments, one of my favorite syntheses of all times. And I think this really does a good job at demonstrating, I guess, the visual aspect and really what I loved so much about the beauty of chemistry. So over here, so what you're gonna start with is copper sulfate, which is on the right, and also a sodium thiosulfate solution on the left, which is clear. I love copper because it's so accessible, and also copper is well known to be a brilliant blue color inside of solution, typically when it's copper 2+. The crazy thing, when you mix them together, it actually forms this emerald green solution. So that, I mean, it might not be crazy for some other people, but for me in high school, this was magic. This was so, so cool. And then, but the reaction's not done yet there. So next up, we need to heat it up. So being a responsible kid that I was, who knew some basic chemistry safety, I was not gonna do this on the kitchen stove. So I ended up getting a candle, lighting it, and setting this outside. Unfortunately, I quickly realized that this candle is not nearly doing enough. It wasn't heating it sufficiently. So what did I do? I bumped it up a little bit and I lit some IPA on fire. So that definitely helped a lot. You can see the beautiful flame on the right. In this process, it not only boiled the solution, but it also released sulfur dioxide gas. For those who may not be familiar, sulfur dioxide gas is highly toxic. So you definitely want to do this outside and don't breathe. The other really cool thing about this is you may see that the color, it transformed from green to this kind of like brick red color. And after you let the solution cool down, you'll see that the brick red precipitate falls out of solution, leaving a clear solution up top. And then after that's done, I filtered out the product and I collected basically this really fine brick red powder. Yeah, I mean, this was so cool to do. And I guess from the chemistry perspective, this product is really, really special. This product, known as Chevrolet salt, the chemical formula is Cu3SO32. It's so special because it actually contains copper 1+ and copper 2+ ions. And typically you do not find copper 1+ compounds stable or just naturally occurring. So just purely from the chemistry perspective, this was a really, really special thing. There's so much more cool things that you can do with chemistry that I learned over the years, and there's so much more beyond that. But yeah, don't just take my word for it. When I was learning all of this, one of my favorite YouTubers was Nile Red. He has since expanded into TikTok. This is my attempt at being more relatable. But yeah, so he's totally popular on TikTok, makes some really cool and very aesthetic chemistry videos. Would definitely recommend checking it out. And there's also many other channels and influencers that I would recommend looking at. My favorites being Periodic Videos, Thoi Soy, and also ScienceMadness.org. I really just want to emphasize that what makes chemistry special in this case isn't just the raw science. It's really that visually it can be so stunning. And I think that really gets at the fact that you can't really take STEM and science in isolation. Even if it is what you consider traditional STEM, there is always going to be an aesthetic. There's always going to be some sort of creative aspect to it. Oops. Next up, I'm going to talk about my time at Carbon so far. So Carbon is making the future of footwear through their 3D printing technology. And I'm so honored to be a part of the project. So over here is, this is a carbon printer. So in short, I mean, Carbon's technology, we are a 3D printing company. We have designed the printers, we have designed the novel technology. And in addition to that, we also create a lot of our own materials that are used to 3D print the parts. So some of you may have heard of Carbon before, but if you have not, it really became public and first became known to the public in 2015 when it was released in Science magazine, and also when our CEO, Joe DeSimone, spoke at a TED conference revealing our technology. So I guess to summarize or to provide an overview of the technology, we have a build platform which basically holds the part. And then this comes down into the pool of resin. So the phrase resin refers to basically a liquid polymer kind of mixture, which can react with light and oxygen to actually become a solid part. So we have the light source underneath. This is a projector, and it shines a specific image to basically help cure the resin into the shape that you want. The reason why oxygen is special is because oxygen actually creates something known as a dead zone that prevents the part from sticking directly to your window. So all of this together, we refer to it as DLS, or digital light synthesis. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you an example of DLS in action. So over here, what we're seeing is the printing of this automotive part that you will see on the top left. So the build platform comes down, it goes into the resin, and then it slowly pulls upward. And all this time, the projector underneath is shining light. So the image that the projector is shining, is shown in this lower right image over here. And as you can see, the build platform basically just pulls this continuous piece out of this liquid resin. I don't know about you, but when I first saw this technology, it felt like magic to me. I guess this contrasts a lot of existing 3D printing technologies, which are kind of a top-down approach. I think one of the most common ones is extrusion, where you actually have your polymer and then you melt it, and in the process, you kind of push out of the nozzle and kind of print layers one at a time. But this is totally a bottom-up approach. And because of it, we are able to achieve novel properties and novel geometries. So one of the key points that really differentiates Carbon's technology from our competitors or existing 3D technology is our dual cure resins. So what that means is there's actually two steps. There's first on the left is a UV cure step, where you shine the light. So that's what we saw in the previous video. You basically shine the light and you pull the part out of the liquid. In the second step, you put it inside of an oven and you basically heat it. And this is called thermal cure. The reason why this step is very important is because it actually, it kicks off a second set of reactions that gives the final part very, very strong mechanical properties. So traditionally, you may have heard of 3D printing in a prototyping context, right? Yes, it's really quick. You make something quick, you try it out, but seldom do you hear of people actually scaling 3D printing for manufacturing and industrial applications. This dual cure technology changes that and basically unlocks our technology for industrial applications. So you may ask, what are some of these industrial applications that our materials are good for, or our technology is good for? So we have a wide range of materials. This is only some of the current materials in our portfolio. The one that you may be most familiar, because that's the one that is currently being used for the Adidas midsole, is what we refer to as EPU, or elastomeric polyurethane. So that's used for your midsoles. That's also used for, say, foam replacements. But there's so much more outside of that. For example, we have EPX, which stands for epoxy. This can be used for the automotive space. It can be used for electrical connectors. We also have CE, or cyanate ester. And this can be, or this is best suited for example, very, very high temperature applications, rigid applications. We also have dental resins, DPR. This is actually one of our largest markets currently. And there's so much more out there. I guess if we were to really distill it down to the crux of what carbon is trying to do, or what carbon is doing, we're really making what the world needs. And that being said, carbon is a very application and a customer-driven company. So next up, I'm gonna cover a couple of the applications that carbon has basically been creating products for. So first up is performance footwear. So this is one that I've alluded to a lot. This is one that I've talked about a lot already. But basically, what makes this so special is that Adidas has years and years of runners' data. I mean, they have the resources, they have the experience. And through actually tracking how runners run, they were able to figure out basically which parts of the foot actually experience the most stress, which parts of the foot need to be a little bit softer. And because of our unique 3D printing technology, we're able to create a lattice that is specifically tuned to serve as a mirror to what the runner's foot actually needs. And this lattice not only improves the runner's performance, but it also reduces the amount of weight that is needed in your shoe. As, I mean, if you've ever seen one of these in real life, a lot of it is hollow. I mean, there's a lot of space and there's a lot of air in between. So reducing the weight of a shoe is constantly a push from shoe manufacturers. So that's an added benefit of our technology. I guess in addition to it looking really, really cool. And I guess tying in the main topic of the talk with materials and design. Yes, it's fantastic that we have these really novel and advanced materials that give the mechanical properties that you need. But this would not be a product if it didn't look good. And that's really where a lot of Adidas comes in. They obviously have a lot of experience with this, and working with them has been such a great learning experience for all of us. Like, for example, color and design is so important outside of just pure function, right? Like, aesthetics is number one for these consumer-facing products. I mean, we can make a shoe that works great, but if it doesn't look good, at the end of the day, we aren't going to get consumers. So in that sense, design is constantly tied to our engineering process. So that's a lot of me talking. Next up, I'm going to show a video that has been released by Adidas that hopefully better explains this technology and this project.
No two footsteps are ever the same. No two minds think alike. So when sport meets Silicon Valley, the future begins. And nothing remains the same. years of athlete data digitally awakened. Glass begins to breathe. Liquid turns solid, and a uniquely perfect lattice is created. A midsole carefully imagined, bringing thousands of athletes together into one precisely tuned stride.
No, actually, just wow, right? Yeah, I think definitely Adidas's marketing team has it down way better than I do, but hopefully you enjoyed that video. I'm also going to cover a couple of the other key applications that Carbon has worked on real quickly. So using the same EPU material that is used for the midsole, we can also create helmet pads. So one of our key collaborators, Rydell, they're one of the largest football helmet makers in the world. They regularly supply to the NFL. And with them, we're able to make custom helmets for NFL players by scanning the head of the players and actually designing a specific helmet pad that fits precisely to that user. Also, we are working with Johnson & Johnson closely in the medical field to design a material that can first help with surgery and also be safely absorbed within the body without a trace. And then on the total opposite end of the spectrum, we are also working with automotive companies to basically create parts for the car. I mean, currently cars use over 300, can often use over 300 different polymers. But we believe through our technology, we can actually reduce this supply chain and create a lot of these different parts with as little as 8 polymers. There's obviously a lot more and a lot of different applications that Carbon is working on. For example, another really big one is dental. And if you're interested in learning more, I would highly recommend you to check out carbon3d.com. There's a lot more information over there. So on to the last section of my talk, which is going to be on how materials and design has really infiltrated my personal life as well. So this isn't really something that I just turn off when I leave work and go home. So as I mentioned, ever since starting making clothes back in 2017, I really fell in love with fashion and textiles as a different medium to create. And as a materials science person as background, I have constantly been very, very driven by like, what is it actually made out of? So that's why I refer to this as materials-driven fashion. And in addition to that, sustainability is a huge part of my personal brand and also like what I care about. So I am constantly looking for new opportunities to implement sustainable practices in my work. So how did it really all get started? How did I go from material science to getting into fashion? Well, I like to say it all began with trash. Specifically, it began at MIT Trash and Show in 2017. So the story of that is my friend is an organizer for the MIT Trash and Show. It's an annual event that is hosted by our sustainability department to basically promote sustainability in fashion by basically encouraging people to create a fashion outfit out of what would conventionally be considered trash. So I had zero design experience. I had never sewn in my life, but I was like, you know, why not? Let's just give it a try, right? And it turned out to actually be one of the most impactful experiences of my life. I ended up creating this look that I'm very proud of. the concept is basically it's a medieval inspired outfit that mixes masculinity. It mixes the silhouette of the masculine like armor inspired piece, but it juxtaposes that with the femininity of the iridescence that comes from the CD shards. So this outfit was made out of trash bags, the clear plastic that you see, and also unused CDs, which really create the paneling that you see over here. I personally think it looks great, but in retrospect, it was very, very poorly constructed. So one funny thing about this experience was basically I didn't realize until after the fact, but clothing has to be functional as well. It has to actually stay on for it to be part of a fashion show. Unfortunately for me, the CDs are actually quite heavy, and the plastic doesn't really hold together very nicely. So like, I want to say like 5 minutes before we were about to go out on stage, the pants kept on falling. And the model was freaking out because he was not about to go out there and basically like moon everyone. So I ended up having to go in and actually pin the outfit to his underwear, which was not a fun experience. But you know what? We made it work. We got the photos, and nobody will know unless if I tell them. Next up, so as I mentioned, sustainability is a huge part of, or sustainability is really what started all of this because, trashing was my first design experience, but it really continued throughout the rest of my work. So for example, this piece, so I didn't create this piece. This was something that I found at a thrift store when I was down in Santa Barbara visiting my father. We randomly went into a thrift store and then I saw this gorgeous yellow gown. You can't really see very clearly here, but the blue is not printed. The blue is actually embroidered. So the intricacy and the detail of this is just exquisite. And I immediately fell in love with this piece. I wasn't planning to buy anything. So I left the store without actually getting this dress. But it kept on haunting me. Even after I went home back to the Bay Area, I could not stop thinking about this dress. And it got to a point where I just went ahead and I like called my dad. I was like, hey, you know, the yellow dress that we saw at the store, I need that. I need that. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. And then my dad was kind enough to go back into the store, I guess, as like a middle-aged man with little fashion sense and buy this like extravagant gown. So yeah, he's the best for doing that for me. And from that, I upcycled it into one of my favorite outfits. What you see over here. So this outfit was originally designed for Coachella 2020. Unfortunately, that got canceled. So it will have to wait in the closet and hopefully I'll be able to wear it for Coachella 2021. But yes, upcycling is at the core of what I have been doing. Outside of upcycling, another key technique that is really central to my work is natural dyeing. So I didn't learn about this until more recently, but all of the clothing that you and I wear today, chances are it was made using synthetic dyes. So these are chemicals that people made in chemical plants, and they're great for color, but they're not great for the environment. Especially some dyes, just the dye process is really not good for the environment because it basically, a lot of it gets polluted into waterways. And as these are pretty toxic chemicals, they have been known to say like hurt a lot of the like water ecosystems. So before synthetic dyes, people actually, it was really common to use natural dyes. So these are things such as like black beans, acorns, really anything that you can kind of like find in nature. And surprisingly, a lot of these actually create really beautiful colors. So my favorite is black beans. So black beans, you soak it in water. You mix it with a fabric. You need to pre-wet the fabric, and also you need to soak it in alum or potassium aluminum sulfate to help the color stick better. And then voila, you get this gorgeous, gorgeous blue color. Even to this day, it still blows my mind every time I see, basically every time I finish a dye batch. It's so crazy that you can go from black beans to this beautiful blue color. And of course, one of the added perks is these black beans are still totally good for eating. So you know that after making this, I made so many batches of chili. With all of this, I think one point that I would really like to get across is that everything that I'm sharing with you, this is my journey, this is my balance. And there's no right way to go about it. I think what's really important is that you find what works best for you. Find the balance between creativity and STEM that really fits you. So in my time, over the past couple of years, several people have asked me, hey, have you ever considered like pursuing fashion design full time? I mean, it sounds like I really, really enjoy it. So I definitely really, really enjoy it, but I don't feel the need to only pick one or the other. I am a strong believer that you can really have both in your life. I can find the fulfillment in my work at Carbon in creating materials for an awesome design. And at the same time, I can also have more of my creative outlet in my personal work through fashion design. And there's no rule out there that you can only pick one or the other. So I'm a huge proponent in balance. I'm a huge proponent in finding what works best for you. Obviously, I mean, what has worked best for me doesn't necessarily work best for everyone else. So there definitely are people who make, quote unquote, make the leap and decide to pursue their creative passions full time, but I am not at that point yet. So this piece that I would like to highlight, this is a piece that I made for Cindy Chen. Cindy is my close friend and former colleague, and she is an avant-garde makeup artist and influencer. So this piece that you see over here is called Editorial, and it is a look intended for fashion editorials that is created out of fashion editorials. So each individual piece that you see over here is actually a page out of Vogue magazine. And this concept was really to capture the essence of the model, Cindy, because every piece that I make is catered specifically to the person who is going to be wearing it. And I want the piece to basically be an embodiment of who they are as a person. So it was so much fun collaborating with Cindy on this project. And on the topic of Cindy, she has been a huge role model for me because she actually worked corporate jobs in addition to building up her own avant-garde makeup presence for many, many years. It was only until this year did she quit her corporate life to become an influencer full time. So I think her example is, I mean, Cindy is another great example that you can find balance. You don't have to pick one or the other, and that you can go very, very far as long as you put your mind to it. Lastly, if there's one message that I'm going to leave you all with, is really that you don't need to feel pressure to silo yourself to one or the other. You don't need to feel pressured to pick creativity or science, materials or design, arts or technology, design or engineering. I am a strong believer that anything good, and I strongly believe the future of all of these fields is at the intersection of all of this. And with that, I would like to thank you all so much for your time. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed the prepared portion of this talk.